Mr. Thompson, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It's 4:15. I believe everyone is. We do have a quorum, and it looks like everyone is here.
Okay, is there any preliminary business?
Yes, other than the usual rigmarole, there's no tablings or preliminary items other than just want to let everyone know that you'll be muted upon entry. If somehow you are off mute, please mute yourself so that there's not any feedback. So it is time for your case. This meeting is being recorded, and it'll stream on YouTube if you want to watch it later. We also have Tony Gillum, who's our court reporter, keeping a record. So please speak slowly and clearly so she can understand everything you're saying. Finally, the chairman will swear in everyone individually rather than as a group. So when it's your time to present, the chair will swear you in. So we do ask that you do have a camera or that you state your name clearly so we can keep a record. Typical time rules are in effect. The board can ask any questions they want, but you'll have 3 minutes to present, and then if there's any opposition, there will be 3 minutes of rebuttal. Like I said, there are no preliminary items, so I believe.
Hey, Jamie,
it's
Jeff Brown. We're asking to table the first case.
Jamie?
Oh, well, okay. I was not aware of that.
Jamie, can you hear me?
Yeah, Dave, hold on a second. So we do apparently have a preliminary matter. We're going to table the first case. And then, Phil, if you wouldn't mind starting up the PowerPoint after this first tabling. So go ahead, Jeff.
Mike, Jeff.
Before you do that, Jeff, I guess I need to swear you in. In relationship to the case GC 20-017, 4201 South Hamilton Avenue, are you the, would you please state your name and your affiliation to this case? Mr. Brown, I swear you in first, I guess. Swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but true, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name and your affiliation to this case?
I'm Jeffrey L. Brown, attorney for the applicant. My client has changed to the design of the sign, and the area commission asked us to come back and share that with them. So we need to table this case today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I have a motion to table this case?
Yes, I motion to table this case.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to table this case, use the sign of aye. And I guess, Ms. Gillum, you want them to roll call or do you want to voice vote?
For tabling, I believe we can do just a voice or roll call. Or you can all in favor say aye, so I think we're good.
Aye.
Okay. All in favor, use the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, sign of nay. Hearing none.
Thank you very much.
And it's tabled. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Okay, Jamie and Mr. Chair, there is another request for a tabling tonight. Sorry, Jamie, if I meant to tell you ahead of time, but maybe I forgot. I'm sorry. So the second case that is requesting a tabling is case number 5. That's GC 20-023 6120 Sawmill Road. And so what happened is that we think that the application was misdirected to the Area Commissioner Civic Association. And so the applicant needs to meet with Northwest Civic Association to get a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present? Requested, or are you just requesting it for them, David?
I'm present.
Okay, whoever
I'm actually
is
present.
speaking, and
Hello.
I swear you in, please. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to this case?
My name is Jerry Helsel, and I'm acting as agent for the landlord and for the property franchisee for the business.
And you are asking to have this tabled?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
just as David spoke, we want to be able to have an opportunity, of course, to get this in front of the correct area commission prior to coming in front of the graphics commission.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to table this particular case?
So moved, Rich.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor of tabling this, use a sign of aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, use the nay. Not hearing any nays, the ayes have it. Motion table is approved. Sir, we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there any other preliminary business, Mr. Freeze?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Then let's call the second case on the agenda, 785, McConnell Drive, DC 20-019. Would the applicant please come forward or
Yes.
make yourself known?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Ma'am, I need to swear you in.
Okay.
Swear to whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record and your affiliation to this case?
Yes, my name is Abby Freeze, and I'm the attorney agent for Morrison Sign.
Okay, thank you. Who's presenting this case?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would you please present the case?
Yes, this was a case that was heard before the commission last month. There was some discrepancy on what was actually being proposed. Phil, if you go to the slides. There were originally two graphics plans proposed, one to allow more than two ground signs directed towards Olentangy River Road. And then the other graphics plan was to allow a number of multiple directional ground signs within the campus. Staff had originally recommended disapproval to the multiple ground signs along Olentangy because, Phil, if you go to the entry feature picture, staff felt that that was a bit too cluttered. Next one. That one. So you'll see that there's a co-backer sign and then the actual identifier sign. Staff recommended that the applicant remove the co-backer sign and install it or have a tenant panel along the Olentangy identifier sign, which they have complied with and are now only applying for, if you go back one sign, Phil, only applying for the multiple directional signs within the campus, which look like the one on the lower left-hand side. And go back one more, Phil. There. So here's the campus, and these are all the multiple directionals. Many of them are existing and have permits. However, when they were permitted back in, I believe, 1998, they did not receive a graphics plan. So they are existing, non-conforming. This graphics plan would make them all conforming. Staff is recommending approval. And we are still going to go ahead and add that co-backer ground sign being removed as a condition just to reinforce our recommendation. So with that, we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Would you present your case?
Yes. Hello, everyone, again. I just want to confirm that we did remove the co-backer house sign there along Olentangy River Road. Ohio Health was okay with that, so we actually got that removed today. We got it removed today, so we are in compliance with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this case? Hearing none, this is a plan, Mr. Freeze, so can we go ahead and vote on this? There's no condition. They've already fulfilled the condition, so you want to still have it as a condition?
So it's a moot point.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Machinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Cooperman,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Carey, Mr. Carey,
There you
Yes, sorry, I was on mute.
okay, and Chairman Thompson.
go. Yes, and it is approved, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Our next case is 1079 North High Street, The applicant please step forward or acknowledge themselves.
I'm here, Chair Thompson. David Hodge, attorney for the applicant.
Thank you, sir. Need to swear you in. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name for the record then and your affiliation to this case?
Yes, sir. David Hodge, attorney for the applicant.
Thank you. Who's presenting this one? Mr. Bennett, are you unmute yourself?
Sorry, yes, I'm presenting, trying to juggle the PowerPoint here. Okay. 1079 North High Street is located at the northwest corner of North High Street and West 3rd Avenue, served by the Victorian Village Commission. It's zone C4 commercial. The 1-acre site is currently under development with a new 6-story mixed-use building. The building includes apartments above retail, a restaurant, and a parking garage. Surrounding uses include apartments to the west and south, a department store to the north, retail to the east and south, a real estate company to the east, and an office and a single-unit dwelling to the south. The applicant proposes to install 2 projecting signs, here shown circled in green, and 1 canopy sign, circled in red, on the High Street facade. The variance is to allow 2 projecting signs that are not uniform in size nor height. So the canopy sign, circled in red, does not require variance. The Planning Division has no comment as the property is located within Victorian Village. And we received a recommendation from Victorian Village Commission today. It's a recommendation of approval for the variance requests themselves. Now, they have not issued a certificate of appropriateness yet for either of the signs. They're awaiting some revisions. But the variance request, as it's worded here, to allow projecting signs not to be uniform in size nor height, that's recommended for approval. City departments recommend disapproval. The intent of the zoning requirement is to have multiple ground floor use signs be of uniform size and position, which accomplishes the graphics code objective of reducing visual clutter. The proposed projecting signs are in stark contrast in terms of both size and position. Additionally, there is no recently approved precedent in the area for a similar type of proposal, which would be out of character. I would like to share the comments for the signs themselves. Like I said, the Victorian Village recommended approval of the variance, but they did have some issues for the signs themselves. I'm sure Mr. Hodge can speak to that as well. Just a moment.
Phil, this is for I have a question. What's the size of these things? I mean, you said something about size, etc., but I don't see that in your PowerPoint.
So the size of the Urban Chop House sign is 157 square feet, and the Whiskey Lounge sign, I'm sorry, I'll show the, can you see the PowerPoint or just the PDF? I'm not sure.
Just the PDF right now.
Okay. All right.
The whiskey sign is 16 square feet. It's a 4x4 circle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Very similar to the Target one up the street. Okay.
Okay, just a moment here. Okay, now you're seeing my PDF, right? So Victorian Village was recommending that the the Whiskey Lounge sign be reduced to 12 square feet. So they're expecting to send revisions. They would approve the Whiskey Lounge sign at 12 square feet. So they just need to submit revisions for that. And for the Chop House sign, it seemed like the commissioners had some issues with the size and the height. As you can see the comments here, not being pedestrian oriented. So they are expecting to change the design of the Chop House sign to be more pedestrian oriented. I believe that covers it. Please let me know if you have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Hodge, would you like to present your case, please?
Sure. So just to remind the commission exactly what this variance request is, it's one variance request. It is to allow us to have two projecting signs on the building that are not exactly the same size. That's what we're asking for. We've got a building on the property that pretty much spans the whole block. It's got 175 feet of frontage on High and 230 feet of frontage down on the south at Third. So it's a very big building. Overall square footage here, we are asking for far, far, far less than we would be allowed by right under the code. This is before the commission with a Victorian Village Commission recommendation of approval by unanimous vote. The Chop House sign that you see here on the screen is not going to be that large, although by code we could be that large and then some. They approved the Whiskey Lounge sign to be 12 square feet. So what you see in your package is going to be reduced slightly. However, they agreed to allow that to be 12 square feet measured on the circle as opposed to measured on the square. The Lux 23 sign is not really even part of this request, but that sign was also approved. We've got to come back and work, do some additional work with the Victorian Village Commission on exactly what this Chop House sign needs to be. You know, when you talk about the short north and, you know, you go from the Cap clear up to campus, there is the Short North Tavern sign, the Hubbard sign, the Hub sign, the Serendipity Lab sign, the Fireproof sign, the 1126 sign, the Scully's sign, the Kroger Liquor sign, which is a little north, and of course the Goody Boy Drive-In sign, all of which are a vast variety of sizes and shapes, and all of which happen to be above 12 square feet. You also have advertising murals, you have Ikes, you have ground signs, wall signs, window signs. So allowing us the right to have two projecting signs on 175 feet of frontage on High Street that are not the exact same size, to me seems perfectly reasonable and a perfectly practical request. And that is the nature of the variance before you this afternoon. Again, Victorian Village Commission recommendation of approval unanimously, and we would respectfully request your approval to allow us to go back to Victorian Village and work with that architectural review commission on exactly what this Chop House sign needs to be. I'll do my best to answer.
So that was my question, Mr. Hodge. You have some idea what it's going to be since it's not going to be what's shown?
Well, it's going to be smaller than this sign in your package, which is measured on the box 157.7 square feet. We think it's going to be significantly smaller, but we don't yet know exactly what the size is going to be. We're in the process now of working with SignCom to figure out what is allowed by right. We know that generally, and we're going to work with the design team, the architects, and ultimately the Victorian Village Commission to come up with a sign that's acceptable to them, but smaller.
Okay. Yeah, and they said more pedestrian oriented. What does that mean?
Well,
it's going to be lower.
You know, it's interesting, Mr. Thompson, and that's an excellent question. And hopefully, all I did is reviewed my Victorian Village Commission notes here to rattle off all those signs. There are a variety of types of signs. The guidelines say that the maximum size of a projecting sign is 12 square feet, which is, the intention is to make that a pedestrian type of sign. To me, that is, I think it's ridiculous to require a sign so small for the Short North in 2020. The Short North is not a historic neighborhood anymore along High Street. And so we think that certainly a building of this mass warrants some additional signage. And I think by and large, the Victorian Village Commission agrees with us. But we've just got to work with them to figure out exactly what this one's going to be. But all of you have been up through the Short North. You've seen the fireproof sign. You've seen the Hubbard sign. The Goody Boy Drive-In is a landmark sign, a historical sign. So we think that a corner of this prominence at 3rd and High warrants some additional signage. You can see from this elevation that there was really some minute detail paid to how this building addresses the corner with the angling there, the awning work and the architectural detail. So we think that a larger sign is warranted here. We don't want to just do straight up a 12 square foot sign to match the Whiskey Lounge sign. And hopefully you all agree with us. To me, 175 feet of frontage, if this were 5 parcels, each of those 5 parcels would be allowed its own sign. Instead, just one big parcel and one big building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mike Hoy. Mr. Hodge, wanted to ask you, would a second variance need to be added to this? And Mr. Rice, maybe you can clarify this for me. But when you have a sign on the building, the entity is supposed to be behind wherever the sign is. Well, obviously, this sign's up in the air. Well, I'm guessing the chop house is on the 1st floor. So would that need to be I'm just talking about a technicality type thing, because I like what I'm seeing here. But is that something that would need to be addressed?
I think that's now. I'm not going to profess to be a graphics code expert, Mr. Hoy, but you do raise a good point, and I feel like that's something that we have discussed since this application was initially filed. But for one reason or another, in working with staff or possibly even zoning clearance, that variance would not be necessary in this case. But the issue you raise is the sign allowed to be on an exterior wall that does not enclose just the chop house restaurant use? And I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't.
Thank you. But just didn't want some technicality.
Jamie, I think if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think I can answer the question that you're asking, Mike. So the variance that's for the code section that's being varied is 337718B, subsection 3. It states that individual projecting signs serving each use or tenant shall be of uniform size, which is what's being varied, and shall be installed on, and here we go, or directly above the portion of the wall enclosing said use. So if you can go back to the slides, Phil, I think that this sign is directly above the restaurant use, so that is not a problem.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So the only variance here is that the signs aren't uniform in size?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
My sentiments exactly, Mr. Cooperman.
I mean, David, I assumed it doesn't need to be a condition. If you get the Victorian Village Commission to approve it, it's still subject to their approval for every rigorous process that they go through. So we don't need to add a condition stating that it needs to be in compliance with however they direct you or however you agree. Correct, Jamie?
That,
Exactly right. Yeah.
that's already part of the process. The city would not issue a sign permit unless and until we have a certificate of appropriateness from the Victorian Village Commission attached to our permit request.
Okay.
Got it. I would say that there's not too many mixed use projects like this that are so large that would need multiple different signs related to the different uses. I mean, most of these buildings are one story, one little block with maybe several stories, but don't anticipate the need for different types of signage that the code probably intended when they drafted the code, related to this area so long ago.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cooper, I think you're exactly right about that. I think that code provision is specifically for if you have a strip mall with 8 or 9 different storefronts, and as you're walking underneath a canopy, it'll say like retail A, retail B, retail C. That, like blade signs is what we kind of call those. So even though that is the correct code section to cite, David makes a good point that this is the short north. He's obviously advertising a much larger portion of the building than a small uniform blade sign would have to represent. So although that is the correct code section, it may not be totally applicable.
And I would say that is the exact argument in our position in terms of there being a practical difficulty here warranting the approval of a variance.
Good luck with arguing common sense with the Victorian Village Commission.
They were actually it was a very good discussion, very good discussion. I think that, they were of course involved working through the architecture here. So they, at least some of them think that this corner here ought to be, warrants a little bit of a landmark, iconic type of sign. Now, there's some concern that the restaurant business is fickle, and they'd hate to see people go through the trouble and expense of putting that sign there only to see the next restaurant come in and have to start from scratch. But
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Hearing no further questions or comments, this seems appropriate for this location. Let's vote on it. And I don't believe there were any conditions, were there, Mr. Freeze or Mr. Benich?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Call the question?
Go ahead. Call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Cooperman,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Mashinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes, and it is approved. Thank you, Mr. Hodge.
thank you, gentlemen. See you next month.
Our next case is 7300 Huntington Park Drive, DC 20-022. The applicant, please step forward.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson and members of the commission. Tracy Deal for the applicant.
Thank you, ma'am. I need to swear you in. Swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Would you repeat your name and your affiliation to this case?
Tracy Deal for the applicant.
Thank you. Who's presenting this one?
This is Michael Merritt. I'll be presenting. Can you hear me?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, GC 20-022 at 7300 Huntington Park Drive. This is located on the east side of Huntington Park Drive, approximately 2,100 feet south of East Campus View Boulevard. This is within the Far North Columbus Communities Coalition, and it's zoned CPD, Commercial Plant Development District. The site consists of a single flag lot parcel that is developed with a hotel and zoned in the CPD Commercial Plan Development District. Adjacent to the property are a variety of uses, including hotels, extended stay hotels, offices, and business parks. The existing hotel is rebranding to a dual brand hotel, which will require new signage across the site. The applicant proposes a variance to allow graphic area on 2 facades to increase visibility from the flag lot to Huntington Park Drive and I-270. An increase from 72 square feet to 283.95 square feet is proposed on the south facade and 100 square feet to 170.95 square feet on the west facade. A graphics plan is also requested to provide directional signage. The far north area plan states that wall signs should be compatible with the size and scale of the building facades and should not obscure or interfere with architectural lines and details. The proposed graphics plans meet these recommendations and thus planning is in support. The Far North Columbus Communities Coalition recommends approval of the application. The applicant proposes increased graphic area on wall signs and a graphic plan for directional signage, both to assist with wayfinding for a dual brand hotel. Staff has determined the signage is consistent with the Far North area plan recommendations and therefore acceptable. And we have a condition that the applicant shall submit the stamped sign exhibits.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Merritt. Ma'am, would you present your case, please?
Yes, I will. The sharing the screen. This should be the screen that I'm sharing. Okay. The property is unique in shape and size, and the building is not actually visible from the roadway. So the wayfinding signage is necessary for the proposed visitors to find their way through the property. The variances that are identified are for the south and west elevation. The south elevation has visibility from I-270. This is the south elevation. The reason for the variance is because in order to have both signs visible from either the adjacent parking lot, which is an office building, or 270, it has to be this size. It has to be visible, and it can't be placed all on one facade because of the windows. So it has to be placed separately. So therefore, it's measured with two separate signs with 2 rectangles. This is the west elevation. This is a replacement of the existing west elevation signage. And again, it's with the dual branding. Both brand names have to be represented clearly in order for them to maintain their licenses with Best Western. To operate as both brands, they have to represent both brands. So it takes up more space for it to be legible from the driveway entry. This is more geared towards pedestrians, so that pedestrians and persons that are in the parkway would be able to identify the entrance. As we know, hotels have many doorways and many entrances. And so it's always important to have some kind of smaller signage near the entrance for that entrance to be readily identified for motorists that are coming up, especially when they're coming in the evening and trying to figure out where their check-in is. This is a wayfinding sign that's found in the driveway. It replaces an existing directional sign, and it is a very small. Sign, but it is requires a graphics plan approval in order to be placed there. This is another image of another wayfinding sign that would be placed in front of the hotel over to the right of where this photograph is taken. It shows here on the site plan. That would be the area for sign number 5. This site plan is inaccurate. This is it. Sign number 5 is here. So there's a wayfinding sign where number 4 is and a wayfinding sign where number 5 is. Out here at the roadway, there's a small monument that looks exactly like the other wayfinding signs, and it's code compliant. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a little odd, but is the main entrance to this complex the same place?
The main entrance is actually for another hotel, Mr. Chairman. And at one time, the whole property was owned by a Marriott hotel owner, and both properties were Marriott branded hotels. And recently, the two lots were sold to different owners, and therefore they're branded by two different hotel brandings and owned by two separate companies. And so this portion up here towards the north where the driveway entry is for the Best Western, whereas this portion is another hotel entirely.
Okay. The Best Western and the Residency are in the same building.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions, anyone? Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this case? And there are no conditions, Mr. Mayor, I think.
Conditions would be to commit to the exhibits that are in your staff report packet.
Considering the site location and this unusual situation, it seems appropriate for this site. We vote on this as conditioned.
Okay, Mr. Bender,
Yes.
Mr. Terry,
Yes.
Mr. Cooperman,
Yes.
Mr. Mashinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hoy,
Yes.
Chairman Thompson.
Yes, and it is approved, ma'am. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and thank you, Mr. Merritt, for all your assistance with this project. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there any other business, Mr. Freeze or Mr. Rice?
Not that we know of.
Okay. Well then, if seeing no other business, I will call us adjourned, and everyone be safe, and see you next month.
Thank you, everybody.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, Mike, and Dave. Phil, Mike, and Dave, stay on for a minute.
Yep.